This has to be the largest looksmaxing fraud I've seen. Dude is reportedly LARPing as a healthcare intern while pulling in over $290,000 a month by promising people that his methods can quote unquote fix their ugliness. And how does he do this? Well, apparently he has some of the dumbest methods I've seen in my life. And honestly, if you believe this, I have a plot of land on the surface of the sun to sell you. Regardless though, meet Oscar Patel, a 20-year-old content creator who's become one of the biggest names in the looksmaxing space. Essentially the corner of the internet where Clavicular came from that is built around the idea of, I guess, your face and body can be optimized like a stat sheet if you just know the correct methods here. And for the most part, looksmaxing content revolves around male insecurities, and most importantly, it's heavily aimed at young guys, and Oscar Patel is no different. However, his positioning within all of this is pretty specific, where a lot of looksmaxing influencers lean heavily into surgery, fillers, and supplements. But Oscar's entire brand is built around the idea that you don't need any of that, just knowledge that, according to him, most people just don't have access to. So, you know, he's kind of like your typical info bro selling that unfiltered knowledge. But hey, within that space, Oscar built a name for himself with a pretty specific origin story. He says that when he was younger, people couldn't tell if he was a boy or a girl, which got him bullied and pushed to the side in social situations. And according to him, instead of accepting this, like, he spent years rebuilding his entire face and body using nothing but free at-home techniques. Or he just went through puberty. Like, dude, what is going on here? Why are you selling the before and after pictures of you pre-puberty and post-puberty as looksmaxing content? This is ridiculous. Apparently, he's a former student at Marlborough College, a private boarding school in the UK, where he was enrolled from age 13 until he graduated in 2024. So by the time he's making these claims, he's talking about something that allegedly played out mostly during his teenage years, while, you know, he was still in school. And I guess just by looking at, I guess, the outward measures, like whatever he's doing is working, because at least business-wise, as he's sitting over 1 million followers across his platform, and based on an estimate using his community members on School, he's raking in about like $290,000 a month. I guess that would be before the platform fees, but still not bad. And this is all from his paid guides, courses, and online community built around his methods. Because, you know, while he was saying it's all free to do, apparently it's free to do, but learning how to do them, that's not free. The info costs money, apparently. And there's definitely some irony here of him saying like, oh, I learned how to do all this stuff with free online methods. Meanwhile, he paywalls all of those free online methods. So there are no free online methods, I guess. But obviously, if you're smart enough to not be interested in buying a land on the surface of the sun, you might say this origin story doesn't really make sense. Yeah, a whole lot of it doesn't make sense. Specifically, his free looksmaxing techniques. So you have Joseph Everett, who is a content creator by name of What I've Learned, and he decided to spend the entire year of 2026 looksmaxing just to investigate what's real and what's BS. And he tracked down some of the photos Oscar uses to anchor his transformation, pictures that he shared on social media claiming that he was 16 years old at the time. However, when he cross-referenced the carpet design in the background, Joseph identified the location as Gaylord National Resort and Convention Center in Maryland, which just so happens to be the venue where the 2018 National Spelling Bee was held. And the news coverage from that day not only mentioned that Oscar participated in this event, but also specifically described him as a 7th grader kid. So he would be like 12 to 13 at that time. And he had the same clothes, same hair length, and same hairband on his wrist. Like, this is him, no doubts. So the photo he's been using to build his transformation story, you know, the one that's supposed to show that before his techniques changed everything, that wasn't him at 16, it was him at 12. So obviously that changes the entire origin story, you know, because his whole transformation, or his ascension as these looksmaxers call it, it didn't happen between the ages of 16 to 19, it happened between age 12 to 19, which is just puberty. Like, come on, dude. And then on top of that, just the whole, oh, you couldn't tell if I was a boy or a girl, that's just a diabolical way to roast your 12-year-old self. But I guess that's fine. Could Oscar's origin story have a few holes in it? Sure. But is that enough to completely write him off just because he lied about his age? Maybe. But hey, let's keep giving him the benefit of the doubt, because people exaggerate parts of their resume all the time. And at the end of the day, it could still be legit, right? So what's this amazing technique that changed his entire facial structure that's totally not puberty? Well, apparently it's called thumb pulling. What is thumb pulling? Well, I guess this is the idea that you can push your thumbs deep into the back of your mouth, press up against the roof of your palate, and pull outward. Yeah. And I guess the theory here is this puts gentle pressure on the structures in your skull, which can supposedly reshape your jaw and face over time if you do it consistently enough. And if your BS meter is tingling, you would have a good signal. But it gets worse. It's all downhill from here because the claims don't stop at jaw lines alone. So, according to Oscar, he used a personal method like this, again, without any surgery, to fix his asthma, his sleep apnea, his crooked teeth, his nose symmetry, and size, and TMD. Apparently TMD is when your like jaw is out of sync and it clicks. He also fixed his overbite, a tilted pelvis, a narrow palate, scoliosis, forward head posture, and even his eyesight. Excuse me, what? Bro has a revolutionary technique that'll change medicine forever, apparently. But if you thought that's bad, it still gets worse, because a part of what makes Oscar's pitch land so well is that he didn't sell himself as some like random guy who just figured these things out on his own. He sold himself as someone with credentials, or at least like loose credentials, because remember, he's like 20, so he's no doctor. But I guess even though he wasn't a doctor for a long time, those credentials were pretty specific. In at least 10 different videos, he claimed to have interned at 2 particular institutions. The AOMT, which stands for the Academy of the Oral Maxillofacial Therapy, and the AAMS, the Academy of the Applied Myofunctional Sciences. And both these institutions focus on like your mouth, jaw, and facial structure and muscles.
I never claimed that any of the professors or myofunctional practices I interned with claimed that thumb pulling works. Believe it or not, thumb pulling works. For reference, I was an intern at the Academy of Orofacial Myofunctional Therapy.
When people in his community started getting skeptical, rightfully so, Oscar eventually released a video specifically defending the thumb pulling. And the expectation was that he'd come in with, I don't know, research, studies, citations, anything to back up these claims. But instead, across the entire video, not a single study was referenced. The description linked out to his paid school community and didn't even mention any science whatsoever. So essentially, hey guys, pay me a monthly subscription. I'll teach you how to do the thumb pulling technique. And don't question it. Just trust me, bro. And I guess in the whole just trust me, bro, he did include some testimonials. So before and after comparisons, I guess meant to show that the technique is working. But if you look at these images, they're not very convincing. They just made me even more skeptical of the whole thumb pulling thing, which is honestly pretty hard to do. Because, I mean, when you analyze these images here, come on. Come on, bro. Like, look at this. Like, the angles never match. Like, for example, here's the first one here. This one, like, this is absurdly dishonest. Like, come on. Like, if you're gonna do some before and after photos, you have to take them from the same angle. So here, the dude is kind of looking in 2 separate ways. Like, the second, he's like sticking out his jaw way more. First, he's like this. Second picture. First. Second. Like, come on. Okay, on the woman, it's a little subtler, but both photos are like technically side profiles, but like in the before, you can tell her face is slightly turned inward and looking a little bit more away from the camera. And then after, she's more like dead on, maybe even looking slightly towards the camera. No, she's basically at a 90-degree angle in the second one. There's probably like a difference between like mewing and not mewing here, which is like, I'm like sitting here bullfrogging. But yeah, no, like, I mean, this is like, the difference here is like, there's like a slight tilt on the woman and she's just mewing. Yeah! 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 What's up, buddy? What do you think about these pictures? What do you say? What do you think? The before and after, it's not adding up. The same thing in this last photo here as well. Like, come on. He's just compressing his face compared to like sticking it out. Dude, no thumb pulling will do this. This is like grifting at an impressive level, especially the fact that he's pulling in like 200 grand a month from doing this. But then at around February of 2025, something changed. He stopped naming those 2 institutions specifically. So the framing shifted to something vaguer, such as interning at a myofunctional institute, but without ever mentioning which ones. And apparently the reasoning behind this, as Joseph Everett discovered, was after reaching out directly to Samantha Weaver, the director at the AOMT and founding member at the AAMS, was that Oscar Patel never interned at either institution.
He's claimed in at least 10 different videos that he's interned at these 2 specific myofunctional institutes, the AOMT and AAMS. I contacted Samantha Weaver, the director of the AOMT and founding member of the AAMS, and she told me that Oscar Patel never interned at either the AOMT or the AAM.
Oh, So he's a fraud, as if we needed more proof for this. But yeah, it's not looking good for him right now. And even the founder of Orthotropics himself, John Mew, who's essentially the creator of the mewing practice, specifically addressed thumb pulling when he was asked. And his position was that the technique is not and never was a part of orthotropics. And he described it as people trying to make money from marketing a natural process, and said that while force can create change, it usually causes harm and doesn't last long. And his advice is simply don't do it.
I asked John, to me, thumb pulling seems useless or dangerous as the pressure applied will either be too strong, uneven, or on the back teeth, or a mix of all three. What do you think? He told me I was absolutely right, and that orthotropics, or correct tongue posture, is the only way he knows to correct it, and he's been in this career his entire life. I then asked about Oscar and his work alongside Mike Mew and said, is thumb pulling something that Oscar maybe picked up from him? John then assured me Mike certainly does not teach thumb pulling.
Which leaves you with a question. Okay, what are people paying $40 a month for? And no, this isn't like one or two people paying for this either. Clearly, a lot of people, like thousands of people, are paying him $40 a month, or else he wouldn't be making 200 grand and above a month from this. But it does get a little weird, because even though John said that Mike Mew, his son, doesn't endorse it either, almost a year later, Mike appeared on Oscar's channel. But I guess he wasn't there to validate Oscar's methods. In fact, he made it clear more than once that he simply believes the technique deserves serious investigation, not that it's been clinically proven to work. Also, I don't really know if it's worth mentioning, but Mike Mew has also recently been facing a misconduct hearing in the UK over how he treated patients, including a 6-year-old who reportedly experienced seizure-like episodes during treatment. But honestly, that's just a whole nother iceberg, maybe for another day. But obviously, beyond the videos, I mentioned earlier he has a paid group. So Oscar runs this paid online community through School, a platform built specifically for hosting these kinds of subscription-based groups. And the funnel feeds into this pretty well at this point, because Instagram is essentially the top of funnel, or the entry point, with short, high hook videos built around insecurities and dramatic before and after visuals to pull people in. YouTube is where the longer content lives, designed to essentially build trust over time through the more in-depth explanations and, I guess, case studies. And obviously the revenue comes from keeping people subscribed month to month. And in Oscar's community, it seems like it involves a pretty structured playbook. So first, give a new member a quick few wins, which is, I guess, an exercise or a technique that makes them feel like, hey, they were already making some progress. And that, I guess, makes them feel like the subscription is worth it. And then I guess they onboard them personally, having Oscar respond to their messages, interacting with the community, and creating a space that they would actually want to stay in. Then they keep them hooked with gamification and content that apparently unlocks the longer they stay subscribed. So in other words, the more months you pay for this course or paid group, the more Oscar gets paid and the more pre-recorded content they get in return. But if you try to leave, you get hit with a dedicated cancellation video, which essentially tries to convince you to not leave. So, I mean, honestly, he's kind of an MVP at grifting, because this is pretty dialed in. Not that I would really want to set out to achieve the Michael Jordan greatness of grifting, but hey, some people want to do that, I guess. The membership of this paid group has been advertised for about $40 a month, and the community itself has reportedly ranged from anywhere from 1,500 members to 8,000 members. And inside, members reportedly get access to structured guides covering jawline routines, gut health, sleep, posture, essentially a paywalled extension of what's already free on the main channel. Now, obviously, not everyone is convinced the content inside is worth the price tag, and there's a whole document accusing Oscar of various business practices that has been circulating online, claiming that he leans heavily on AI tools like ChatGPT to generate a lot of these courses and PDFs. And there's also allegations that any members who leave negative feedback end up getting banned from the community. So that's not really a good look either. It's kind of hard to verify all this. So this is just a little bit of speculation, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was true. But honestly, like, imagine paying $40 a month for some ChatGPT generated PDFs. That would be abysmal. But hey, this is being reported on a lot on looksmaxxing.org, a forum dedicated entirely to this stuff. And Oscar's name pops up here a lot, not in a positive light, because for the most part, the discussions revolve around everything I've already talked about here. The idea that his extension was just puberty. Then they also speculate that he may have had surgery. Honestly, I don't think so, because all of these before and after photos just look like puberty to me. And then obviously, you know, factor in like different lenses used, different lighting, and so on and so on. But regardless, I mean, this is how I guess the broader Looksmaxxing community is looking at Oscar. So at this point, is it safe to say that Oscar is a grifter? Well, there's clearly manipulated before and after photos. There's straight up lying about the age gap between pictures, and then, you know, name dropping certain institutions he interned at, but apparently never interned there. That seems to check all the boxes in my book. Because I mean, to me, it sounds like he's selling something under false pretenses, and something that just straight up doesn't work. Because like the whole thing about like just pulling on your mouth for a few minutes a day can replace, what are they called? Like a palate extender device that people have screwed into their skull to actually do this thing. That's just ridiculous. I mean, that is so beyond laughably stupid. It just screams a fraud. And honestly, I don't think Looksmaxxing is a healthy thing to be pushed to the youth, as suddenly you have so many kids wanting a double jaw surgery. I have never heard of a double jaw surgery until this year, when suddenly I'm seeing all of these like 16, 17, 18, 19-year-olds wanting to do the surgery because I guess some prominent Looksmaxxing figures have gone and done this extremely invasive surgery. We've just pushed things so far into the extreme, because before the messaging was like, hey, eat healthy, have sugar and alcohol in moderation, and do a mixture of lifting and cardio every week. But apparently that's not enough anymore. Now we have to do insanely invasive surgeries and do everything possible to ascend. When in reality, I think it's giving a lot of people body dysmorphia, because at no point should you ever be doing the Walter White special to stay lean. That is beyond ridiculous. And please don't ever yank and pull on your palate to extend your jaw. But there's just so much irony in this entire ecosystem, because many of the people creating content for these insecure audiences come across themselves as deeply insecure. So it kind of explains why this kind of content resonates so strongly, both with the creators and the viewers of this. And also, one last comment on the, I guess, the spelling bee thing that Oscar didn't win. He was apparently eliminated after misspelling the word roguery, which I guess the dictionary defines as behavior or an act of a rogue, specifically trickery, cheating, or fraud. That's some interesting foreshadowing going on there. And no, at the end of the day, there's nothing wrong about wanting to look better, but please approach all of this with some skepticism and some discernment, because there's a whole bunch of people who want to sell you on things. And obviously, there's nothing wrong with selling a product, but if you're selling said product or a info product based on a technique that clearly does not work, and I guess is in a way under false pretenses, because you're saying that you worked or interned at 2 institutions and you worked on this there, but suddenly it came out that you didn't work at these institutions. That's just an awful look. But other than that, if you're new here, feel free to subscribe, drop a like if you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.